9/11 was both a tragedy and one of the defining moments of our culture. Life as we know it changed that fateful day on September 11, 2001. 3,000 lives were lost, but countless more would be affected. It makes you wonder, could it ever happen again? And what would happen if it did? Welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions. I'm Charlotte Dobre. The question we are asking today is, what if 9/11 happened again? To expand on that, could a large-scale terrorist attack happen again, like the one on the World Trade Center in 2001? And what would happen if it did? According to a poll, 29% of Americans believe a deadly repeat assault like the one on 9/11 is very likely. In February 2001, a bipartisan federal commission warned that terrorists would acquire weapons of mass destruction and attack against Americans on American soil, and that those attacks were likely in the next quarter century. Ways to improve national security were suggested after this warning, but none of the methods were implemented until a year and a half after 9/11. Because Congress oversees Homeland Security, that means implementing those national security improvements was like going through a maze of bureaucracy. Congressional committees can't agree on whether issues of national security lie with the Department of Homeland Security or somewhere else. For that reason, to this day, the US remains unprepared to deal with the same kind of terrorist attacks that they were warned about before 9/11. The US federal government has taken steps to improve security at airports. Now, every large passenger plane in the United States has a cockpit door designed to withstand bullets and small explosives. Airport security measures have been tighter since 9/11, but not necessarily if you're on a private jet at a small airport. Terrorism experts warn that as time goes on without an attack, the biggest problem with security is that officials will begin to let their guard down. So then, what would happen if somehow, someway, another group of terrorists slipped through the cracks and hijacked another plane with the intention of bombing US landmarks like the Freedom Tower? Never say never. If an attack like 9/11 happened again, we would see much of the same response that we saw in 2001. People would be shocked, they would grieve, everyone would wonder, how could history have repeated itself? One of the main differences would have been our society's current link to technology. If 9/11 happened again, everything would be documented by the victims. Perhaps many would live stream being trapped inside burning buildings. They would post pictures and accounts of what was happening. Images and videos would flood our feeds, and they would be graphic and disturbing. But despite the gruesome details social media would provide, it would also be extremely helpful in providing evidence to engineers and officials investigating the tragedy. Social media would have painted a clearer picture of the attack. YouTube didn't exist in 2001 when the planes hit the Twin Towers. If another large-scale terrorist attack were to happen again, YouTube would be the place where the conspiracy theories would start, as it always is. It would be the biggest news story of the year. The media would amp up the fear-mongering to levels we have not seen in recent history. Many would blame the acting president for not doing enough, and they would also blame whoever voted for him or her. The acting president would have regarded another attack as an act of war, so subsequently would have responded by directing attention at whomever was to blame. But as we saw with the case of George W. Bush, the attention could have been directed elsewhere. After 9/11, the concern didn't only lie with bringing those responsible to justice. The American government targeted Iraq and war criminal Saddam Hussein. George W. Bush admitted himself that Saddam Hussein had no hand in the 9/11 terror attacks, but he asked Americans to support a war in Iraq that he said was the defining struggle of our age. If a similar attack would happen again, who knows what chain of events would have begun, or how the US would have responded. One thing is for certain, after 9/11, we saw a surge in patriotism in the USA. If another large-scale terrorist attack were to occur again, the American people would do what's necessary to get the bad guys and rebuild infrastructure. They would have signed up to fight, they would have paid higher taxes, all in the name of liberty and freedom. The chances of another large-scale terrorist attack on US soil like the one on 9/11 are unlikely. US borders, however, are still not as tight as they could be. Air and sea cargo is still not fully screened, and there's little security on passenger rail systems. Still, your chances of dying from a terrorism attack is so thin, it's more likely to die from getting struck by lightning. Cyber terrorism, however, is a growing concern. According to the FBI, cyber terrorism is any premeditated, politically motivated attack against information, computer systems, and data. Possible cyber terrorist targets could be critical public infrastructure, like power plants, water treatment facilities. An attack on New York's transit system would result in mass chaos and death. But we at Life's Biggest Questions can only answer one topic at a time. Let us know what you think of this video in the comments down below, as well as any topics you would like to see next. I'm Charlotte Dobre for Life's Biggest Questions. Don't forget to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more answers.